So welcome everybody. Hi. As Debbie said, I am a therapist, and I've been practicing for 14 years, and I see everybody, but in the last several years, I've gotten quite a few adolescent kids, mostly girls. I think they think I'm cool, and they quickly realize I'm not. So they're attracted to me, and what has happened is that I've learned a lot about kids today and how it's changed immensely, as you all know, from when we were kids and our parents were kids and so on and so forth. And so I did a talk about 8 months ago entitled Screen-agers, Today's Adolescent, Why Kindness is Missing, and I presented research and information basically about how the screens and the phones and the iPads and the video games are affecting you know, essentially their development, what's happening to them as a result of all of this. And I know that if you're here, you know that there's a problem, you know that, you know, something's happening and that we need to figure out what to do about it. So I started out doing a lot of talking, and ever since I presented my information, I have been doing a lot of listening. Because the solution is a lot more complicated than presenting the problem, as I've learned. My thing was, well, just take away the screens. Well, I'm realizing that it's not that simple. And so I wanted to kind of start talking and getting people together, and the kids. I'm glad you guys are here tonight, because I want to hear from parents and kids about what we think we can do about this. So I have a few talking points, but since we are such a small group, I really do want participation from all of you. I want discussion, and I'll appreciate, you know, any kind of, even if you want to tell me your story, you know, and we can talk about, you know, what to do. You know, I would love that. But what I would first like to start out with, because when I start talking about this, overwhelmingly what I find out from people is that they feel that if they not only, you know, think about taking away the phones, but just limiting the phone usage, what that means, what kind of consequences are we going to see as a result of that? One of the major consequences people are talking about is then their kids won't have friends, that they'll be completely alienated from the group. They, you know, they won't know what's going on, and they'll feel very lonely, and then that leads to obviously bigger issues like depression and things like that. So I would like to start with that talking point, because I think that that's really at the forefront of the issue. And my hope was to get a group of people together to talk about getting the parents of the kids' friends that your kids are friends with, and talking to them and saying, hey, you know, Johnny isn't going to have his phone this weekend. Let's figure out how the kids are going to actually see each other, or how they're going to, you know, plan an activity together, because it's no longer really your job when they hit middle school or high school. So, you know, just kind of one of the things that I love about Grosse Pointe is that it's a community. And I think if we could come together as a community and say, hey, maybe the kids don't have their phones on, you know, X, Y, and Z day, and they do, you know, A, B, and C instead. So I'd like to just kind of, you know, start with that. So if anyone at this point has anything to say, please do. If not, I will, you know, kind of keep talking. Anyone? I mean, I don't want to put the kids on the spot, but I would assume that these are things that you think about if your parents were to limit your phone usage or even take it away. I know what I hear from a lot is if you get in trouble, you know, like in my day it was you're grounded, you didn't get to go out, you know, your phone gets taken away. So what does that feel like? What happens when those things go on?
Definitely what goes through my head when they take my phone away. I think about now is I just get kind of angry, but after a while I just blow my steam off and go do something else, because I mean I know I'm not going to instantly get it back if I yell and get angry over it. I'm trying to take up new activities for when I react that way. So I'm trying to work out, I'm trying to box, I'm trying to do all these things to, you know, if I ever get in trouble or punished, that I can just go do that and forget all about it.
That's great. That's really awesome. And do you find that the angry response, so when I first presented this information, a big part of my presentation was talking about addiction and how actually this is an addiction, because the endorphins in your brain kind of, you know, rise when you're getting something that you're enjoying doing. And then when it's taken away, it goes down. So do you find that was maybe why you were reacting in such an angry way?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's overwhelmingly what I hear from kids, is that there's such a very severe angry response.
Yeah, because it's basically, we were given this at a young age, and it's all we've known.
Right,
So.
right. And I've heard kids say it's like their lifeline, you know, and I can understand that. I mean, it's my lifeline, but to me, I feel that it's my lifeline because I have a job, and that job provides for my family. So for a kid,
it's a tool for me.
It's a tool, right?
It's not vital. These kids have an entirely different social model now.
Exactly.
There's a level of fearlessness in their discussions. We've had to take away certain apps because we found things that are very questionable, very explicit, things that I wouldn't want anyone to say in a social manner that he said to others. That's why it's been severely restricted. He now has to turn his phone into his counselor before school, and he picks it up at the end of the school day.
Wow.
But we recently found he was using other kids' phones and doing the same thing. So this is an addiction, clearly.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot from the kids that, you know, I've heard kids say, oh, well, I'm not supposed to be on Snapchat, but I am anyway. Or, you know, they get their phone taken away because they get punished, and then their friends then continue on the Snapchat streak because that's their main concern is, you know, I want to keep that going. So, yeah, I mean, what I really wanted to focus on tonight was the middle school ages, because this is where I see the most dysfunction. And in my opinion, and I still think this after 8 months of people fighting with me about this, I don't think the middle schoolers should have them. I think that, you know, and even in high school, that's when we should still limit and monitor and make them check them in at night and, you know, not go to sleep with them and all of those things. But in terms of middle school, they're just not ready for, you know, what you're saying is some of these apps are giving them this stuff. So. Yes.
To have limitations, and it makes it kind of impossible as a parent when there aren't any sort of parameters at school.
So this is what I've learned. I think you walked in a little late, but I said that, you know, since I've been talking about this and you know, presenting my research, overwhelmingly what I receive in return is, you know, you can't get the phones taken away because of the school issue. So I started listening. I started doing a lot of listening, and this is what I've realized, is that the schools are actually encouraging the kids to bring the phones.
They are.
Yeah.
They're a part of
They
their
don't have a
learning.
policy? I mean, because it's starting to be an issue at the elementary school.
Yes, that too.
We got at Trombley, you know, a notice in our thing that, you know, got home the communication saying that there's a problem with kids using the phones in school. And I'm like, well, isn't there a policy?
Right.
And they said that their policy is that the kids they can bring them, but they're not supposed to use them at all.
Right.
And I was just kind of under the impression that that would be also the case at middle school. You know, because even at the elementary school level, I just have a 4th grader and a 1st grader, and we get the pressure at home that everybody has a phone, and I'm like, well, you know, we make our own choices, whatever. But, and then when I saw that, I was like, wow, you know, they really are feeling like everybody has a phone. And then someone did mention that the middle school is encouraging it
Yes.
as a tool to use
As a
in
tool.
school.
Right, as an educational tool.
Well, I would
control
disagree with that, because my son has advisory at Pierce, and all they do is use their phone. All the lists, he's told me, teachers go to print things, they say green zone. It's becoming a babysitter for teachers. It is out of control. It is the switch flipped from Trombley to Pierce.
Mhm.
And it's unbelievable. I spoke with a counselor. She had a situation one day where a young lady, student, didn't like what the teacher said, texted mom. Mom called counselor. Counselor didn't even have any awareness of the situation. This is all within minutes of it happening. She said it's a nightmare.
Mhm.
So
And
what
it's
are they?
not just for education.
And that is what's happening, you're right. And, you know, people talk about, okay, well, how can we get them off these apps during the day? Are there, you know, controls? The kids are very smart. They know how to get around all of this stuff.
And
So,
the school doesn't seem to care.
yeah,
Frankly, I don't see them being very like, this is a problem at all. Like,
Mhm.
they sent us this, and I thought it was quite ironic,
Mhm.
since it is a free-for-all.
But what are
at
they
Pierce.
saying, what are they saying is the educational purposes? Like, what are they wanting them to use their phones for?
so my understanding,
No, it's
No,
more.
in high
there's-
school.
So, I mean, so,
In high school, I don't know if they do this in middle school, because I don't remember, I don't think there's a thing yet, but there are learning apps like Quizlet and Kahoot where we do testing
And Remind.
and reviewing in class.
also
But that's pretty rare, that only happens when there's a big test or something big going on.
to look things up.
I have at one middle school.
It's a quizzing, it's like interacting with class.
Yeah, so Kahoot is like where you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
familiar
it
with-
connects your phone to the smart board, and it's like a review, basically.
Okay.
So what happens for kids that don't have a smartphone that has that capability?
In high school, everyone has one, so
Mhm.
if there's a kid that doesn't have one, then the teacher will set him up with one. Because usually the
An
teacher
actual
has.
phone or like an iPad or?
The teachers usually have like extra iPads or an iPhone or something they can give to them.
I have a son in high school at North, and I have a daughter in middle school, upper middle school herself. And they always say that the teachers encourage them to look things up on their phones. But something that I haven't done anything about, but I wanted to, and I'm sure a lot of us could be helpful in this, is I had this is a very young teacher, one of the North teachers, a very young teacher. My son does not have her, but I came in contact with her, and she said, after a test is over, she allows the students to use their phones, which I can't imagine that you would want to do that right after a test, especially because other kids are still doing the test. And in middle school, some of the teachers would say, bring a book right after the test, and that is certainly what we want to encourage. And so I haven't really had a chance to talk to the principal about that, but that should be absolutely not
yeah,
a way to spend time after a test.
Yep.
And so your original idea about having a day off for kids, like in the community for the week, I'd say for adults, kids, teachers, everyone
Yeah.
should take the same day off, Sunday or whatever it is during the week, because everybody is guilty of this. You know,
That's
too
right.
much time on your
It's a
phone.
major
We're all
distraction.
checking it. It's a tool, but we're still all checking it. What are
Right.
we missing? And we all just need to think about this. But really, this is not that important. Whatever it is, can wait unless we really need to get a hold of someone. And, you know, the old-fashioned way was they call one another. Nobody does that.
nobody does
So
that,
it's
yeah.
text, it takes more time sometimes to text someone and they text you back than just pick up the phone and say, I'm going to be late, you know, or something. But anyway, back to the schools. They really need to really get together. Possibly you can be very helpful with that because that is tutorial. Yes, my son, I was able to monitor, and he has never used his phone at school until this year. And I was able to find a monitoring way to see what he was doing. And I said, what exactly were you doing tutorial today? He's very honest with me, he told me. And I said, you will never ever do that again at school or you will not have a phone. And that is the way it is. You know, it's just, he knows he's not supposed to use it at school, but these people who are monitoring tutorial are not paying enough attention so that they don't see somebody with their phone. They're supposed to be looking at a book.
That's
during
right.
Tutorial, or doing math problems or something. They're not supposed to be using their phone for anything.
That's right.
It's just not.
And
enough.
my understanding of what's happening, at least in Grosse Pointe Public Schools, is that there's not any technology in the schools. And so the schools are saying, please bring your technology because we want to, you know, do these educational interactive learning tools. But they're not addressing the side effect of what's happening. And so we're losing control, I think. You know, I've heard a lot of that even just in this discussion as it's out of control. Yeah, and so I think that more conversation with the schools is necessary.
With Grosse Pointe being a better school district than many in the state, and we could certainly be a leader in this, where we say this is a problem and it's
That's
time
right.
to do something about it.
That's
Not
right.
just let it keep getting bigger and bigger and person worse.
And I will say this, I could have been more diligent about this, but I have reached out to the schools, and I really haven't gotten a whole lot of feedback from them. I could have followed up, I could have, kind of pushed my way in the door, so it's half my fault, but, they weren't excited to talk to me. Let's just say that.
You might need more of a coalition.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you might need a bunch of parents.
Yes.
To be with you to say, yeah, this is what we want.
I think so too, because they are heavily driven by parents and what parents want, and yes, absolutely.
I was gonna say, I think we're probably the minority.
Oh, yeah.
Most parents want to be able to act like, I don't text my son at school ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless it was an emergency, I just wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
And yet, clearly, a lot of people, they want their kids to have, they want immediate access to their child.
That's right. That's right. Somebody had a hand over here.
I know, I believe that there are filters at the schools, but the other thing is that at recess/lunch at the middle school, like I know my son had told me about something that they were watching that was profoundly inappropriate, like not something that any middle schooler should really be looking at. And it's like, I just don't know how that's possible, and unless you can absolutely ensure that that's not going to happen, it shouldn't be allowed. Like, I can't understand how an educational environment can have this giant crack, that it just seems fraught.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of how many parents are doing, like, a lot of monitoring of their kids' activities? Like, where they're seeing, I know there's some stuff where you can see, like, all their texts, you can see every picture that, you know what I mean? Like, you can pretty much have a copy of whatever they're doing. How, is that pretty prevalent, or?
Not in my experience. Well, you're talking people, so parents now of these kids grew up in the 70s, right? Where, you went outside and you explored the neighborhood and you didn't check in with your mom or dad until, the lights went off. So I think that, we're approaching our parenting in that way, just giving our kids whatever everyone else is doing and saying here, and not realizing that there are a lot of dangers that we do need to monitor. And what I've been saying is that, yes, monitor, but guess what? Developmentally and in terms of the parent-child-teen relationship, that is extremely unhealthy. They need their freedom and independence. They need to go out and explore the world and make mistakes and fail and learn from them. But when we're giving them this, in my opinion, very dangerous, apparatus to discover things that they're frankly not ready for, you have to monitor it. Yeah.
The things they're putting out there, their tracks stay forever.
Yes.
On social media.
Yes, right.
Realize what they're writing or visually showing, if it's explicit, it's going to be shared like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
I work
And
for
they
local.
think that didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
That my daughter says, Snapchat goes away in 20 minutes, Mom.
Not once
Right.
they take a picture
No,
of the
no.
screenshot.
The screenshot.
Nothing never goes away, somebody can find it.
That's right.
Well, you probably don't necessarily want to be putting up things up there that you think are only okay to,
To be disappeared and
yeah, like,
right.
Why does it need to disappear?
Well, that was my first reaction to Snapchat. Everyone thought it was all the rage, and I thought, what are people doing that they only want somebody to see for 10 seconds? That's a little concerning, especially the kids. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And the ability to manipulate people's faces and do all the crazy things with it makes it all the more interesting to children.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something adults use.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's for children.
Yep, it is. Yeah. So, we know what the problem is, right? We're all here because we know what the problem is, and I think that my intention for tonight was to create, kind of a mobilization, and I think you said it. Let's go to the schools with this information and with our opinions about what we think is appropriate and not, because, they're only hearing from the parents that want to check in with their kids 20 times a day. And those parents are happy. Those parents are very pleased that they can, ask Johnny if he forgot his baseball uniform. So the rest of us need to have a voice as well. Was somebody?
About a coordinated effort, how would you suggest that
Well, I mean, I don't know. Let's brainstorm. I'm happy to, maybe write a letter with, my credentials and what I see going on and how it's affecting their development, and maybe have some signatures along with that.
Have you done research in the area with other school districts and what their policies are?
I do research beyond just the clientele that I get. So I get kids from other districts, and some of the other districts already have technology in place. So the kids aren't necessarily bringing their own to school. They're using it at school, and obviously they're not acting, inappropriately because they're using the stuff for educational purposes. So I do think that there's something to be said about, if we are looking to technology for increasing our education, then the schools need to provide that so that the parents aren't feeling like they're forced to send their kid to school with a phone or an iPad.
And I think that's been a big issue in our school district.
Yes, it has been.
Particularly in the high schools, that we're kind of behind on that, and I think bonds have been attempted, and, so that's going to be hard, because I don't know if there's the money to supply, what would be necessary.
Right, and so in my opinion, I don't have so much of an issue as sending a high schooler to school with a phone. I think that they're old enough to have a conversation, to talk about, what they should be doing and what they shouldn't. And, sure, they're going to break the rules and they're going to, get into trouble, but not as likely as a middle schooler. So my opinion is that, I don't know, I mean, I'm not an educator, but do we really need all this technology in the middle schools? I don't know. I
work in elementary in the community, and again, I don't have hard and fast data, but I've often, made the comment to my son that I would really like to go to your school and walk around with a clipboard and note in one section what's social use and what's actual learning, and I can bet $1 million at what side I'd end up on. But it's true that it's also become an issue in elementary as well.
Yes.
And they're even less equipped, and so I would have no problem bringing a letter or whatnot to have a discussion with my building principal. I think she's very open-minded to get things going, but obviously my concern is more at the middle school level for my own kid, but I've never seen kids more tired or anxious in elementary already. And I mean, I've only been at this about 13 years, but it's changed that much already from what I see.
Yes.
Kids are exhausted,
Tired and anxious.
Tired and anxious.
I can relate to that.
That's right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually one of my talking points. I'm seeing this. It's an epidemic as far as I'm concerned. It is a big problem.
In our house, we have set rules. The phones come into me at night. When they eat meals, the phones go away.
Yes.
And when they do homework, the phones go away.
That's right. And I would say across the board, for any kid that has a phone, even well into high school, those should be the rules. There is no reason for them to take their phones in their rooms at night. And they all tell me that they need the alarm clock. And I tell them, go to Target and buy an alarm clock, because that's what we used to do. Yeah, and no reason for it. And they're on it all hours of the night. They're just overstimulated by it.
Now, a lot of the parents heading from, most of the parents are saying, like, they believe 5th grade is the appropriate time for the phone, primarily because of the increased safety component with them going on to middle school. My feeling is if you're super concerned that they have a way to get like a hold of you, like, could we all not just agree for flip phone?
Thank you. And I've been saying this,
like,
but
do we have to give them a smartphone for this? Like, if you legitimately feel like your kid needs a communication device on at all times for safety,
But then the other thing is these kids, if you give your kid a flip phone, I guarantee you the anxiety that they have because of the other kids. I remember when my daughter, this was probably, I still had a flip phone and everybody had the iPhones. And this darling little girl said to my daughter, "Where does your mother live? Under a rock?"
Aww.
And that would, I mean, that hurt me.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what, you know.
Well, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I feel like, oh, you know, I think, like, it's reasonable to the, you know, to say your kid needs to be safe. Well, a flip phone is reasonable, but then are they going to be embarrassed? Are they going to? But
Yes,
we
they are.
know that giving them all these things that they want is having a negative outcome too. So it's like everybody gets to have the same negative outcome, just they're all the same. Right. You know,
well,
so
it's, you know, it's like my
Yeah.
son who has food allergies, and he, you know, is socially, has a very difficult time. But what am I going to do? Give him eggs when I know he might die from them? I mean, and not that I'm saying they're going to die from the phones. It's a very extreme example. But the idea is that we know what's best for them. We see what's happening. You know, experts are coming out. I'm not the only person talking about this. People are saying that this is a problem. So would we rather them be embarrassed? Or would we rather them be, you know, developmentally damaged? You know, one of the things that I talk about in my presentation about this, with the research that I found, is that this impedes on empathy development. And these kids are lacking empathy, and to the point where it could be permanent if we don't do something about it. And that's scary for all of us as a society when these kids grow up. We're already seeing it with the cyberbullying, you know? It's so extreme, and it's constant, and it's ruthless. And so I think that we have to do the tough thing and maybe, you know, embarrass our kids by giving them a flip phone. And maybe, you know, our friends will do the same because we see, that, you know, that, okay, so this kid is okay with a flip phone. Well, maybe I'll give my kid a flip phone. And then the more kids with flip phones, then nobody will be so embarrassed. But we have to do the tough thing to make the change. We have to get a little uncomfortable. And in 5th grade, you know, I'm seeing this now in the elementary schools too. It keeps getting younger and younger and younger. My son is in 2nd grade and was at a birthday party, and he was the only one without a device. And he started crying when I picked him up. And we had no idea this was going to be this kind of birthday party. So younger and younger, 2nd grade, at a birthday party.
My 7-year-old had a friend over. The first thing the friend said, "Where's your iPad?
Yeah.
You have one?"
Yes.
She was flabbergasted.
Right.
She's 7.
Right.
No, she doesn't have it.
That's right. You know, bring your device to school. They do that starting in kindergarten. Bring a device to school. My son brought a calculator because we don't even have an iPad at home. We don't need one. We have our phones, we have our laptops for work, and we don't need an iPad. So.
Another point for the coordinated effort list is, as an example, for ourselves as a reward day, and one of the things that you can choose is to bring your device and use it for reward time.
Same as the
And I just,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things that I'm sure you can come up with something.
That's right.
So it's just got to be, and we do have a lot of very young teachers who are married to their phones as well, and and they're into technology, but they're also so much into it. And one of the things my husband and I both see in business is when people are coming in as interns and can't communicate very well because they're used to, they're not used to being social in person, they're used to being social on a device. And that's a real problem too, and that's one thing that some students are aware of as they're getting older, that they have to learn to look people in the eye and talk to them. They're so used to looking down at something and punching into it.
That's
They're
right.
talking into it at this point and recording that. They can't communicate. So you talked about, you said that it impedes on empathy. I also think it impedes on social skills.
Yes.
And in the communication skills overall, but I'm seriously worried about intellectual skills. I don't know if there's any studies on that, like whether this is actually killing people's brains.
Yes, it is. Actually, they just came out with a study of preschoolers and how it's affecting speech development. And they're finding that, you know, if you give babies, you know, 1 to 2-year-olds, and you know, these apps are peddled as educational. You know, learn your ABCs, and they're the music and the bright lights, and they're attractive to the babies. But they're finding that this is actually affecting speech development. That is extremely alarming, as far as I'm concerned. So if it's affecting speech development, then yes, it's affecting intellect. You know, our brains grow until we're 21, and so you can't imagine that a middle schooler, a high schooler, even a college student isn't getting affected by this. I can tell you, I have to take continuing education, and I do that online. And I would not have survived high school or college with the internet. It didn't exist when I was in high school. Well, it was starting to. But it's too distracting. It's so distracting. And I think that really does affect how they learn and their brain development. And I've been heavily focused on the emotional side of it. But the intellectual side is a concern as well. Yeah. A while back you had something and then we got distracted.
Well, I was going to say that what I hear, so I have high school kids, and what I hear when I say, I don't take away the phone as a punishment, but I do kind of keep pounding on like time management, and you know, like don't try to multitask, study and look at your phone. So why don't you just turn your phone off, and if you need to put it in another room, and they'll say, but there's Quizlet on the phone. And it's always their kind of go-to, like, well, it's going to help me, you know, because there's Quizlet. And so, I'm not sure, I mean, for that age group, I'm more concerned about, like, what, and I guess younger too, but what time management skills are we learning? And this whole kind of what I consider to be a very false sense of, well, I can multitask.
Yes.
I think that they're starting to find that multitasking is just really not really.
That's right.
They know that multitasking is just switching back and forth very rapidly. Multitasking doesn't happen at all. The brain isn't capable of it unless it's on autopilot, like unless it's something that really doesn't take the brain. And then there's also like studies that show how long it takes to get back into an activity once you're interrupted, which is like 20 minutes. So if they're constant, I mean, I can imagine that they're never even getting into a deep state of processing information if this device, and it's not for Quizlet, right? It's not for really for Quizlet, because like if you were doing like Quizlet, couldn't you be like you do your stuff and your phone is in another room, and then you go to do Quizlet?
Right.
I mean, like, it doesn't have to be sitting next to you for the entire time you study.
Or I'm thinking,
the purpose of Quizlet, you know, like that's like a separate activity.
I agree, and I suggest, and people don't like when I say this, but I don't see what the problem is. I suggest having like a central kind of, maybe a central computer or a central iPad where, you know, if they need to do something like that, they can do that. But it's kind of located in like a living area where they can still interact with you. You know, there's something about having the device in front of you and pressing buttons and getting a cause and effect. And so if you are interacting while you are, you know, whatever, on something for educational purposes, then you can still connect with the people in the room. That's why I don't have as much of a problem with like television as I do with these devices. Because again, central, you can interact, you're all watching the same thing, you can talk about it, you can talk about it after, but it's so personal when you have a device or a screen in front of you. And it's encouraging inner, you know, just staying inside of yourself and not connecting to the outside world.
Yeah, I think too, for the centralized computer and the Quizlet, that's exactly what we do. One kind of comes in, just like in Quizlet comes up all the time. Quizlet's right there on the Apple, just go and use it, and then you won't have 75 Snapchat messages come through as you're doing Quizlet, because that's what happens, is you answer a question in Quizlet, and you'll get Snapchat. There you go to your text, and you go into Quizlet. And, you know, the centralized computer, it really does, you know, it's constantly a battle getting to use that because, oh, no, it's going to be more convenient while I'm laying on bed. It's not nearly as productive either, though, if you're sitting up and you're engaged and you're in Quizlet, straight on Quizlet for a half an hour versus doing everything else. So even, you know, the reason that it has to be centralized in that case is so you don't seem to get off into some other social media device that you can use on the computer. But it, you know, it's not even sometimes just the centralization of it. It's the fact that so many of those other things are available only on that small device. You really don't have to send it to your computer, right? Your email might come through. If you don't have, you know, Facebook messages up and stuff like that, it's really just about studying and that's it. And so it does, that centralized computer, that's exactly what we do. It does help.
That's good, good.
Quizlets are available. They're right there on the Mac. Just go ahead and do it.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, thank you. Because the last time I mentioned that, I got a death stare. So I appreciate that.
And sometimes you're like, you know, that was the excuse. We just just had to resolve this the other day. She said, well, I can't remember the password. It's set up automatically on my phone, and I can't act. I'm like, well, we can figure that out. There's going to be a forget password. And we sat down, and it took, my wife and I time about 30 seconds. We're like, all right, it's up, ready to go.
Right.
You guys changed my password? Yeah, but here it is, and it all works. So I think there are a lot of excuses around that device. That
That's right.
just need to kind of dig into those excuses and make sure they're valid.
That's right. And well, it is a trap. I think it's a trap for all of us. You know, I mean, I go to check my email and then I'm checking 5 things and I don't even really need to. Yeah. Yeah.
When you talked about the empathy component, it really kind of struck a nerve. Our son is in 6th grade, so it's first year of middle school, and it's been a rude awakening. And we've had a lot of personal challenges. There's been some deaths in the family and so forth, which has exasperated it. But it's like some of the things I hear, I mean, it's, I'm not that naive. And it's just like kids are just not nice to each other anymore, including my own. I just feel like the age of innocence is completely gone from elementary to middle school. And I don't know what, we don't have phones while we eat. It stays downstairs, but there's still, I just feel like we're fighting this losing battle.
Absolutely. And it's not starting at middle school, it's starting way younger, way younger. I can't tell you how many times my 8-year-old has tried to argue his way into watching a PG-13 movie. And I keep saying to him, you're 8. And he started this 2 years ago when he was 6. And a lot of his friends are actually watching them. And so his argument is, well, so-and-so gets to do it. And so you're right, the innocence, we're losing it. And I just look at him and I think, you're only 8. I just don't, this isn't making sense to me. Yeah, and a lot of what I've heard from people is, get over it, this is the way of the future, this is what we need to deal with, right? And I'm not buying that. I'm just not buying it.
Well, I find it challenging to think, like, sometimes how hard it is for me to do what's appropriate with my phone. I mean, there are times, like, I'm at work and I have to say, okay, I have to go put my phone back in the office, because if I don't, like, if something's going on, I will be, so I just think, like, I never had this, and as a grown person, hopefully with some ability to control myself, it's challenging. Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine what we're setting them up for if it was always this way for them before they ever learned how to control themselves.
That's right.
It's a challenge. I mean, I think it's a challenge for so many of us adults.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have strategies and think. They were introduced, I think I got a phone when I was like 30. Mm-hmm.
It's an overload of the excess of information I don't think he needs.
Mm-hmm.
Personally. At this age, he doesn't need to be dealing with all of this relationship. I'm sorry, BJ, but you're too young to be dealing with all these complications. School should be the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not.
And I really think it'd be easier for the kids if, and you guys can tell me, otherwise, if more parents thought like like you did, like you parents that are here tonight. Because I think where the problem comes in is that, maybe they respect and honor what you say and they actually, agree with you, but what about their friends and what about their social life? And I know that's just a really big, important thing for them. And so the key is to get more people to see it this way. And I find it really interesting that I have conversations with people all the time about this, and people are always nodding their head in agreement. But yet, at the end of the day, there's really no change being made. So we know what the problem is, but this really, really tough solution is so hard. So yeah, I think we just need to keep talking about it.
Does anybody know if there's a recommendation by the Pediatric Association?
Yes.
I mean, I listened to a podcast that has a pediatrician, and her recommendation, I think, was no smartphone device until the age of 14.
Mm-hmm.
That was the lowest that she would even consider recommending. Which 14 is what grade?
That's high school. That's 9th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know if the Pediatrics Association has a stance
They do.
on what's appropriate.
They do, and I'll address that after I say this, because I find this very fascinating. That Bill Gates just recently came out and says that he did not allow his kids on a computer until they were 14 years old. Bill Gates. And before Steve Jobs died, somebody asked him, what do your kids think of the iPad that you invented? I wouldn't know, it's banned from our house. So to me, I think that's very poignant. And I've heard this, you know, there's now articles being written about Silicon Valley execs who purposely send their kids to schools that don't allow phones. And their philosophy behind it is, we were innovative enough to create this because we didn't have this in our lives. You know, we had to get creative. We had to, you know, use our brains. We didn't have a device to think for us like these kids are doing. So, you know, going back to that conversation about education at middle school and what we need and the technology factor, I don't know that we necessarily need that at that point. But the pediatricians this year in 2017 have now come out with some guidelines. And they say nothing before the age of 2, which, thank you, finally, somebody has said that. Hallelujah. And then they say from 2 to 5, I think they say 2 hours a day, which I still think is too much. Screen time in general. Yes, yes. And then after that, they really don't have any regulations. They say after 5, you know, it's really sort of up to the parents, you know, limitations, but they're not very specific about, you know, what they think should happen after 5, which was a little disappointing. I thought, you know, I think they need to be more specific because even at 5, that's really young. So.
One thing that you just brought up with Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, one of the big things that I work with my kids on is the idea of consumption versus creation.
Mm-hmm.
And how I only want so much of their time to just be idly consuming, and I try to put parameters so that they will have time when they have to be creating rather than consuming.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's hard.
Yeah, I love that though. That's awesome. Yeah.
I think a fair point was raised that it is the culture of kids now that is their social interaction. And so to say, well, you and 5 other parents, kids who agree with me are going to not have your phones while everybody else has their phones. I mean, that's, I don't know. I don't know that we can, get that big of a coalition. But also, I just think that, it just is, the fact of the matter is that we used to call, on a phone that was on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
with a cord.
Right.
And that's, and then we made plans and got on our bikes and met wherever,
Right.
And it's just different now.
Yeah.
And it's not bad, it's just different and unfamiliar to us. But to me, I guess my hope is to at least, teach them to recognize that, this can be distracting when you're trying to do this and homework. But I always think, if I could only have the brains to create an app that would be like a timer, like you can have social media for an hour a day. You pick whatever, if you want that in 5-minute increments or whatever, you pick that, but at the end of the hour, the social media gets turned off,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're...
There are
those
apps.
exist, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, they do.
Exist,
Most
but you have
people
to pay
who
for
work, like,
most of them.
Yeah, people who work, say from home or on the computer a lot,
Yeah.
they'll install them, so because they find they're wasting
Yep.
too much time.
They
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's kind of.
Yeah.
Most of them are a paid model.
But here's what
They're all, yeah.
And here's what I hear though from that is it's almost like the kids want all or nothing. I shouldn't say nothing, they want all. And so when you limit it like that, you're still getting the same reaction as you would get if you didn't give it to them at all. you know, go ahead.
And doesn't that speak to me, and this is just based on my experience from my own son who had to leave, unfortunately, wish he could have stayed, that speaks to the addiction,
yes,
period.
yes.
I mean, to me, we've had that discussion quite a bit. Like, we happened along an episode, actually, at Little House on the Prairie, if anybody remembers Little House on the Prairie. And there was this, Albert was addicted to some drug, and I used to love Little House, so I thought, I've never seen this. But anyways, the point was, he's going through this withdrawal and this lying and this sneaking, and it led into a conversation about addiction is addiction, whether it's to food, or drugs, or alcohol. And the behaviors our son does are just addictive. He lies, he sneaks, he goes underground, he has somebody else sign it. I mean, it doesn't, he's always going to be 100 steps ahead of me because I'm very non-savvy.
That's right, they will. They always will. And you know, whatever. In my day, it was fake IDs, and we just knew how to make them, and we made them good, and that's what we did. Right. And these kids now, they know how to get around our limitations. So yes, of course, limitations are great, and we should always limit them when they do have the phone. But if we're seeing addictive behaviors, it needs to be eliminated, just like we would see, you know, that with any other addiction. But yeah, the same areas in the brain that get lit up with winning money and eating chocolate get lit up with using the screens. They've done studies on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the social factor, I think that kids nowadays, when it comes to social media, if something happens and then there's a fight or something or whatnot, kids are all talk and no action. They say things online that they would never say in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Yes.
They are, I guess I'd say more mature, but I wouldn't say it as mature because a lot of,
Fearless.
fearless.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
A lot of kids are more old. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And do you know why that's the case?
Because they think they can't get caught and it's just there and then it's gone.
That's right. And
back to the point, it's always there.
yeah, and there's something to be said about face-to-face, right? So we're talking, you're looking at my body language, I'm watching yours. If you at all get uncomfortable with something I say, most likely I'm gonna back off, right? Well, when you're in front of a screen and you don't see somebody's face, how uncomfortable they might be, how you might have really hurt their feelings. You know, it's very easy to say something mean. It's very easy to say something inappropriate because yeah, the emotion is gone. I mean, have you ever had that experience? I don't know, do you drive yet?
No.
Okay. So when you drive, you'll probably have this experience, and most of you will know that, you know, if you're trying to get into a lane with heavy traffic, it's a lot easier to make eye contact with somebody and, you know, ask, hey, can I get in here? Instead of just trying to kind of squeeze your way in. And why that is because you're not going to say no to someone that's actually, you know, it's a connection. You're making a connection when you look at someone's eyes. You're making a connection when you see, you hear their tone of voice, you see the way they're reacting to what you're saying. And when there's a screen in front of you, none of that exists at all.
Well, and I think some of the things that we've seen on social media have been alarming too, in that the disconnect, like some of the Facebook Live things that people will put up there, not even understanding that what they're doing is a crime, that it's like there's you know, there's been some, you know, like pretty widespread cases, and it's like when you're looking at it from externally, you're like, whoa, how do they not know that this is a crime, like a kidnapping and a holding, you know, and torture and things like that. And you're just wondering, like, how do they not understand, you know, how do they not understand, and it seems like a disconnect. Like,
you're absolutely right.
They're just not processing that this is out in the world, and then they're not processing their own actions as things that are affecting other human beings.
And it's what we're creating, essentially, with this generation. It's what we're creating. And what that is, in psychological terms, is sociopathy. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is where the schools could really help, because if a lot of teachers, counselors, and administrators were on board and saying a lot of the same things that some of us have said here tonight, and then that's just more messages that the students are getting from other capable adults and giving them the messages about how they should be talking to people, how they should be talking with people. I sometimes see a group of kids, and you see this with adults and kids, sitting around at Starbucks, and they're all, instead of talking to each other, and again, this is just, social interaction is one thing, but if you're actually together, you're supposed to be together. And I think teachers can really help communicate that. The middle schools have something called, Parcells has something, and it's every Tuesday, and the teachers are supposed to do this little segment, I forget what it's called, but it's every Tuesday, and they're supposed to do some sort of message. And it's really kind of fluffy, you know, but it could be used for stronger messages, but you could have stronger, you don't need Tuesdays to do that. This, again, was just a culture in the school to talk about these good things. It's just, it's repetition, too, to people to hear this over and over. Mm-hmm. This isn't good for you for these reasons. Mm-hmm. You know, do you want to have a job one day? You're going to need to get one, and you're going to need to talk to someone.
Yes, that's
right. It can't come from the parents, especially when you have kids my age. It's going to be so much better sometimes coming from a teacher because they hear their parents all the time, and it kind of goes in when you're not your mother. Because, you know, you're all like that when you're younger, too, probably. But it can be so helpful coming from a teacher that they really trust. Mm-hmm. And so I just really think they can be so much part of the solution. Parents, of course, have to be there, too, but and some aren't. Some parents are using this as a babysitter or making their own life easier by, okay, just give them the phone, or oh, give them back the phone, or just, you know. You know a lot of parents like that.
Well, and you know what I'm noticing too, and this has been very eye-opening for me, is the culture of how we're raising our kids. So how the phones, I'm going to explain how the phones enter into this, but first I'm going to talk about what I would consider overscheduling. These kids are extremely overscheduled. So not only are they feeling a lot of pressure to take the honors classes or the AP classes, because my understanding now is that college is so competitive, which it just blows my mind. But they're also feeling like they have to have, you know, all these activities after school. And so what I'm seeing in my practice is that these kids are going to their sporting events every night until, you know, 6 o'clock, getting home, you know, having hours of homework, not even really getting any time to themselves until 11, 12 o'clock at night, and that's when they're on their phones. That's when they're interacting with each other. And I just started to make all these connections after I'm hearing from these kids and realizing that, that the parenting has had to change. I mean, we now have to shuffle our kids around and, you know, make sure they're on top of their homework and not give them the kind of free time I think that all of us probably had when we were younger. And so they're not really getting proper socialization. And they're not going to go and hang out with their friends at 12 o'clock at night on a school night. So they use their device to connect and talk to their friends. So, you know, and here's another hard thing to bring up, is that maybe we need to eliminate some of, you know, their stresses and their pressures and all of the things that they have going on, so they do have more time to put their phones down and go hang out with their friends at Starbucks. And I think that it's something to look at, because like I said, I'm now just realizing a high school student told me that she barely got into Wayne State with a 3.0 grade point average. That blew my mind. I mean, Wayne State used to be, you know, everybody got into Wayne State. So I think what's happening is that the colleges are getting so competitive, and they're coming to the high schools and even actually the middle schools and talking to the kids about, you need this and you need this and you need this, and now there's all this pressure. So that's why we're seeing the tired and the anxious. And that's trickling down, believe it or not, even into the elementary schools. Because that's just the culture now of what's happening. So
you talked about speech development. I'm actually a speech and language therapist in the schools, and so this is a second career for me. So when I was student teaching about 15 years ago, I was student teaching in a first grade classroom, and you know that curriculum now for years has moved down to kindergarten. So my brain works from development. You know, I look at children. What's developmentally appropriate.
Yes.
And so now all of a sudden we keep pushing everything down and trying to make it developmentally appropriate, and all of a sudden, you know, so-and-so has an impairment, so-and-so has a learning disability, so-and-so has this, so-and-so has that. And it's like, well, maybe so-and-so just isn't.
They're not ready. That's right.
You know, one of my son's teachers in first grade made a comment of, if you think about crawling and walking, you know, yeah, we have general milestones, but what if we took everybody from 0 to a year and said, put them in a room and said, you all have to walk at the same time because that's the expectation. no different. So it's created a lot of different issues.
That
Educational
is-
and pressure, obviously, for the kids, because
Yes.
we feel pressure to make them perform because
Well, thank you for saying that, because you're right. That's really where the core of it is, and that's where it snowballs, because you have parents then being anxious because their kids aren't where they should be, when really, you're right, that looks different for every kid. I mean, developmentally, we're not supposed to learn how to read till we're 7, and now we're pushing kids at 5, some even 4, because they're entering in before they're even 5. So. And, I mean, I'm hearing parents in my practice come to me with babies saying, oh, well, they're not saying full sentences yet. And I'm having to explain basic development to people because somehow we've lost that along the way. Yeah, so it's trickled way down. And then by the time we get a middle schooler and a high school, we are, all of us are extremely anxious about their futures. And so where does that leave their free time, their creative thinking time? Their time to hang out with their friends and just be kids. Yeah, and that's what the device is providing for them. Yeah.
But kind of a double-edged sword, because, you know, maybe also some of the anxiety is because the devices allow kids to say mean things, you know, and that, I think, produces a lot of anxiety. Oh, you know, someone, what do you call it? Take a picture of a Snapchat.
Screenshot.
Yeah, screenshot. And, you know, then sent it to so-and-so, and it was something that she said about her that was really mean, and then someone sent that to the, you know, and then it's like, now the girl's reading this really mean thing that somebody said about, you know, it's just like, wow, you know, we just got all so mean. You know,
Yes.
These devices that I can imagine the anxiety produced from that, and, you know, just thinking like, okay, well, who's saying or doing something about, you know, that's mean to me or about me or whatever. It just seems, I don't know, really awful.
Oh, it's awful. It is.
And it's instant, it's fast. So like,
yeah.
I said, you know, like back when I was growing up, if let's say you broke up with your first boyfriend or whatnot, you might be able to talk to a couple of people who are in your perimeter, but then you'd have to wait Saturday, Sunday. By then, maybe you're bored or you're over it. Whereas now is when everything happens, it's out. And then 10 people who don't even know that couple are spreading it out because it's fun. And it's just, it's the same thing as accessing inappropriate things. You know, okay, now I happened along an inappropriate thing. I'm going to click on that, and now you're into 10 more and 10 more. And it's all happening at warp speed, whereas back in our day, I mean, you had to kind of earn it or wait for it or find a way to get to it, and it just took a lot longer to access so many things.
Well, and you know what I was blown away by when I first started to go down this road was that, you know, kids who hadn't even really had the sex talk with their parents were online, you know, watching pornography. And, you know, we need to find a way to communicate with them about what this is, and to just kind of blindly hand this to them and not talk about sex. Wow.
Right.
Wow. That's a problem. Yeah.
I'm sitting here, I'm thinking that maybe the cat is out of the bag.
Yeah, you're right.
And because I hear the same things. You know, my sons are 30-ish. They came of age and got phones at about the time of the recommended 13, 14 years old, flip phone. But I see the same thing in our political conversations online and everywhere. And those are kids, those are adults, doing the same thing.
Sure.
And you know, what age, I don't think it's my peers, I'm 69, so I don't think my peers are participating, probably some of us are, but people younger than me, but older than our children, are using this platform to be very viciously rude. I don't care which side you fall on. You know, they're making stuff up, posting things that they think are funny, I think are tragic. It's, you know, is the cat out of the bag? Can we start with your children's generation, or do we need laws? it out feed, you know, security. Maybe they can put something in our security blanket we all have in our computers, so that, you know, you can't get to these type of sites. You know, I know there are individual apps maybe, but those can be gotten around.
Well, I think it is headed in that direction. I mean, now, you know, at least in Michigan, there's a law about sexting, and, you know, if you receive a naked picture, you could be prosecuted for child pornography. And potentially be put on the, you know, sex offenders list. So that's a very serious consequence. The cat is definitely out of the bag. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, I think a lot of people are just kind of putting their hands up and saying the cat's out of the bag. But, you know, how did we fight big tobacco and whatever else was bad for us? We still have to fight it. We can't just put our hands up and say, well, it's done. The kids have the phones, and let's be done with it. And I do think policy will probably have to change eventually to see a real big change.
I don't know why I just thought of this, but, you know, I grew up in a household where we didn't have a TV until I was like 13, which was like unheard of, you know, like, and I guess I kind of remember, like, but I don't like remember it being like a huge deal. Like, yeah, people knew we didn't have TV, and I couldn't talk about a lot of the things that people talked about, but it really was not an issue. And that's pretty radically different. I didn't know any other households that didn't have TVs, you know. So I was fine. We were all fine. You know, so there was an aspect that we weren't sharing with the culture, but it was just a tiny piece that we didn't have. That really was a large piece of a lot of people's lives.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I mean, so to me, it's not that foreign to, like, I had a parent who didn't want to have, you know, a TV in the household, and so it's not a foreign concept to me. So, you know, I think if, you know, people who definitely haven't had that background, which most people wouldn't, then, you know, the idea that you don't have what, you know, 95% of the population has is unsettling, you know, but it was okay, and, you know, so part of me feels like, you know, they'll be okay.
They'll be okay.
You know, like, I understand within reason, you know, but by the same token, we didn't have, like, the school try to tell us, you know, you have to, in order for you to succeed, you have to put a TV in your home. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't this other pressure.
The ante has been raised.
You know?
Yes, it
so
has.
It's a lot, it's bigger than it was, but there's definitely, you know, things that aren't mainstream that are okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. The general idea is the kids will be okay without it. Yeah.
But one point about that I'd like to make is, you know, you talked about how the phones are so solitary when kids are using them. And so my son didn't get a phone until he was in 8th grade. And at lunch, the kids are allowed to have their phones. And he was literally the only kid just sitting there. And he's like, I had nobody to talk to. Everybody was on their phones. And he would just sit there and I'd say, who did you eat lunch with today? I ate alone. You know, and so it's a little different than the TV because they're at school and they're doing this, and it is a very solitary thing. Although they may be interacting, playing games with each other on the phones, but, you know, if you don't have it, you really are sort of left out.
That's right. And the kids can't understand that. Actually, the people with the phones that seemingly are interacting, they're very lonely too, because that is disconnected and increases loneliness. But it's hard for the kids to understand that. They think, hey, they've got it all. You know, they have what they need.
So are there literally no parameters in middle school? Like there was
Each individual teacher might.
What I mean, what does that mean?
Not really.
There are red zones and green zones.
There's different zones. So some teachers may say, and this is only my limited experience with my son. Some teachers may say, you dock your phones, they're not allowed in our class, period. Okay, but then you still run into the kid who sticks it in his pocket anyway, or the kid who claims his battery was dead and tries to confiscate. So there are some, but not
asking
consistently.
them to do what? Leave them at the door?
Leave them on a dock, don't turn them on.
Okay.
Some will circulate the room and make sure, nonstop. if they feel very strongly about it. But there doesn't appear to be a consistent policy across the board. And
so a green zone means what? They can do whatever
I think so.
they want on the phone?
I think so. Like you can use it like somebody else said when you're done with the test. Great. Why don't I just whip through this test because I want to be on my phone because I can't use it at home, right? Oh my God.
That's right.
It's crazy.
There's a high school teacher too, but she said, well,
Right, but they have
she
to
said
say
they're
they
going
can
to do it anyway, so I may as well let them. And I thought, no way, you know, this is not.
That's right.
So teachers, they all do have their own little policy in their classrooms. But, and when this gentleman was talking about laws and that we need more of them for this sort of thing, I thought, well, I actually tried to Google them. You can't because we're by the War Memorial, but we're kind of close to the water, and you can't get it here. But I wanted to see, do we actually have a policy?
Yeah, so the school
that would be good.
itself does not have a policy, I'm assuming outside of inappropriate content, right? Let's hope that they.
At South?
I mean, at the middle school.
As far as I know, the middle schoolers want the kids to bring their phones. They are encouraging
Are they
it.
blocked from being able to?
They have filters, but they're inconsistent. So there is the policy that the kids all have to sign at the beginning of the year is that they will use the phones or not be doing inappropriate things, but you know.
Right.
Does it ever get enforced?
I would have thought that.
There's
they were
no
allowed to do
electronic
that.
measures taken to filter them.
Well, going back to
Which
the
could be
empathy
done.
piece, you know, there's the one piece about are they saying things that are inappropriate, but to me, the thing that crushes me the most are the things that when I do decide to randomly look through my son's phone or whatnot, the things that crush me are the immediate things they're doing. They're the Snapchat, they're the videos, and the things that are so hurtful or out of context that they're sharing out, or videotaping teachers, videotaping what's going on in class. It's like, to me, that's almost, and at least in middle school, the bigger problem because.
What are they doing when they
Because if
videotape?
something happens in the classroom, they immediately get on their phones and they videotape it. So
Right.
that coverage.
I'm
This teacher was wrong, and we're gonna prove that this teacher was wrong.
Oh, wow. I did that. I was not aware of that.
Consult with the
Yes.
school district on occasion. I work for the media industry. And I've been told that during the PA announcements, it takes the Wi-Fi in the building completely down.
Because everybody
They're on their
records it.
phones.
Right.
So
Because
much.
why?
Because they're on their phones.
They're
and
using
it's
so much.
consuming so
I mean,
much bandwidth.
at the meeting.
Broadcast, so we can go over the air and we can't live stream it because everyone is using their phone, that it's sucking all the Wi-Fi, that it just can't play. We have to pre-record it.
Oh my
Play it
goodness.
over the school because if you live stream, all the Wi-Fi is being used and it just won't work.
Wow.
They were saying at the diversity meeting that like 50% of their activity is social media. That's what the superintendent said. That's what's happening
During the
in the
school day.
schools.
Right.
With,
Right.
I don't know how they track that, but that's what he said, 50%.
I mean, I'd be
Yeah,
happy
on the
to
school network,
challenge that in middle
if
school and
they can't get their
elementary.
phone.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
so ready.
Yeah.
Because it's frustrating. Can I ask you a question? And this is just kind of something that recently has been planned in my head. So my son has recently been making allusions, and again, I get it's his perception. He's a young kid. He could be just saying things. But I wonder if he sometimes feels that some teachers abuse social media. For example, some other people have talked about, let's let media babysit you while you're at. So in other words, he's claiming that some teachers have a habit of then using that time. And again, how would a 12-year-old discern if what she's doing is appropriate or not appropriate or linked to learning or not? But I'm just curious if you found that you've seen, I mean, this has only been a few very specific teachers that I guess I would say he feels that teacher in that classroom is not necessarily using their phone appropriately as a role model.
I've heard of that.
Interesting.
And I'm not making an accusation. I guess I'm just curious because you're the only younger fellow here.
Do
so.
you mean like the teacher?
Like Instagramming or
during class? Like
during class.
whenever they have downtime?
Right.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've definitely
Wow.
I've seen it in elementary school. I mean, I can personally say that I've seen it in elementary school.
Really?
A teacher did get, what do you call it?
Reprimanded.
Yeah, reprimanded by the principal, because I think the kids went. And maybe the principal walked into the classroom and saw it. I think that's what happened.
On their computer.
So they are on, yeah.
It's just,
Wow.
I was just curious because it makes sense. It goes back to what this man was saying back here, you know, it's just, yeah, it's more prevalent for the younger kids because they grew up with it younger, but there are adults and there's abuse and role modeling of this across age spans.
That's right.
And across professions
Yep.
Well, you know, if you look at, if you are on Facebook, I'm on Facebook, and I really pulled back a lot on it. It's like, I don't want to sound there have been times when I probably posted more than I should have, but I mean, I can think of families, I know their whole vacation. Like every minute. And so it is us adults are doing it.
We'll go to a restaurant and look around the restaurant.
That's right.
I do not let, our major rule has always been no phones at the table. This is our time to spend as a family. And if you look around the restaurant,
Oh, yeah.
it's amazing.
Yep.
Look at the kids walking down the streets.
Yep.
They're not talking to each other, they're all doing this.
That's
It
right.
reminds me of when they were really little and they did what they called parallel play.
Yes.
When they were too young
To interact.
But they would be sitting next to each other.
That's right. But that's developmentally appropriate at that when they're little. It's not appropriate when they're older. Yeah.
Everybody checks in now.
That's right.
Adults, we check, I don't anymore, but, I did it for a while. Everybody checks in, it's like, oh, so-and-so's having dinner at Red Crown tonight.
That's right.
With this person.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, and that's definitely come up in discussions as I've been talking about this, as the parents and our role in modeling this for the kids. And that really, I think, just speaks volumes to how addictive it is. And really, from a psychological perspective, we all are looking for validation. We're all looking for people to, like us, literally like us. And so it feels really good when you check in or you have a picture and, you're looking good and somebody likes it and, people comment. And even the wording, I said this in my presentation, stunning and gorgeous and amazing. We're using all of these really extreme adjectives to comment on a picture. So it's increasing that likelihood of us posting more because we like that. That's a good feeling. So if we are feeling this way and we're fully developed adults, what are the kids going through? And middle school and high school are warped with needing validation and approval from our peers. So this just, I think, heightens it and magnifies it to an extreme that I think is very damaging.
Well, actually, I was listening to a podcast and they were saying that Facebook is doing studies on how, so instead of when I like your photo, it automatically shows, they're looking at how, withholding them, because they have, studies that show that people keep checking until they get to a certain amount. So they're actually using some of their, algorithms or whatever to, they know that there's this addictive behavior that once you get a certain satisfaction, you diminish how many times you keep checking.
Yep.
And so they are playing with that. And so not only is it true that if it just existed the way it did, we get this intermittent reinforcement and all these things that happen in our brain, but even on top of that, they're looking for ways to manipulate that.
That's right.
Further.
That's right.
Which is insane.
Anderson Cooper did a segment for 60 Minutes about this, and it was called Brain Hacking. Yeah. And he interviewed people that are in, Silicon Valley, and it's literally their job to hack people's brains. They come up with algorithms all the time on how to control for people to continuously check and continuously need these apps. So yeah, it is. That's exactly right. That's what it is. It's the increase in the dopamine. Yes, the video games, yes.
Where they keep trying and trying, and then they reach, okay, now I get to the next level.
That's right.
And then they keep on going.
And they're designed for that, yeah. What were you saying, PJ?
I was going to say something I read about the dopamine, the stimulants released in your brains. If you, related to social media, if you get a certain amount of likes, so you're going to be happy, but if you don't get that goal, you're just going to be sad, depressed, anxious about yourself.
Fear of missing out.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. And that's why we see all this tiredness in kids, because they're up till all hours of the night making sure that they don't miss out on anything. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I also, and I like that you brought that up, because I think it goes the other way too, where sometimes it's not always good validation that you're looking for. You know, maybe you post something really negative because you want people to, you know, show up for you and make you feel better. And oftentimes, you know, even if people do comment, sometimes they don't, because they're a little scared or they don't know what to say. If they do comment, it's very, you know, kind of insincere. I see a lot of hugs or thinking of you or, you know, love you, but really in the end, I mean, if that was your real friend, they would call you up and they would say, hey, what's going on with you? I saw your post, what's up? But that's not happening. So then that kind of, you retreat then further and further into your depression, because you're not getting what you're looking for anyway. Yeah.
Well, I find Facebook, I think it is kind of depressing. Like,
it is.
Especially, you know, if your life is, you know, we all have challenges, and if your life is in a challenging spot, you look at it, it's like everybody seems to be.
But seems to be.
Seems to be.
Studies on that.
Yes.
You know? And, you know, my son now has, you know, this year, like, oh, I guess I wasn't invited to that. Oh, I guess I wasn't, you know, like, oh, yeah, I know how I have felt at times, and it wasn't even close friends, like in the school community. It's like, oh, I guess you weren't the family that was invited to the pool party, you know? Kind of
yeah.
thing. And so, you know, a 12-year-old,
oh yeah,
I get that.
That's right, that's a big deal. Whereas I think it was, you were saying, you know, back in the day, if something happened on the weekend, or, you know, some kids got together and you weren't invited, you probably might not have even heard about it. Because,
or known that you were, I mean, things
or
just
known.
lost steam because it had time to.
It had time to,
you had
that's
time
right.
to process your feelings. You had, and I don't think any of us are silly enough to think we should be keeping our kids from being sad or depressed or disappointed or excluded or any of those things. I just think we've lost sight of how we've allowed that to change so drastically.
Yeah.
That we're not providing the skills that they need.
That's right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with our kids being sad and depressed and upset. I mean, I think that's a normal feeling that they've got to experience.
That's right.
And it's how do they navigate that, and what tools are they given in our, you know, in life to be able to healthily.
I know, but that's what we are supposed to do as parents.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or through real life experiences.
I mean, we've all not been, I'm sure everybody in this room has not been invited to a birthday
Right.
party.
Yes.
That's
And
right.
had our hearts broken, but that's life.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But I think, like you said, it's so magnified now, and you know, the meanness is so magnified. So it's not like, you know, you came home and your best friend said, "Oh, I don't like what you're wearing." You know, we all had to deal with that, but I don't think they should have to deal with what they're dealing with now.
Yeah, you would get hurt, and it would be, you'd go to mom.
Yeah.
So everybody knows.
That's right.
And that's embarrassing.
That's right.
That's even worse than not getting invited to the party.
Yes. Yeah. And
everybody knows about it, and they're talking about you.
that's right. And they're so covert about it too, in so many ways. You know, the subtweeting and the, you know, I forget even the terminology on Instagram. There's all these ways to hurt somebody, but then they don't really know it's from you. So it can be very covert. But they know that they're the ones that are, you know, targeted.
So how do you deal with, I mean, I'm sure this is part of your clientele.
Yes, it is.
They're sort of victims of that. And
Yeah.
what do you tell them?
Yeah, well, you know, it's really a matter of building them up and, you know, explaining to them that what's on the other side of this is somebody that's hurting very much, that's struggling, that's very disconnected. And let's talk about you and all the good things about you, and, you know, just kind of building that person back up and explaining that this is not normal, you know, that people aren't, that because of the phones and the issues that have gotten magnified, things are not okay. And to have, I think, you know, somebody at the other end hearing that, I think it's very important for them. They need to know that that this isn't normal. You don't need to be experiencing this. So, yeah.
And what ages are these, most of your clients that you
At
experience?
middle school, 6th to 8th grade, and that's where I see the most problems.
Do you have any group settings for the kids to, like, where you do group?
I don't at this point, but I'm open to considering that. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Yeah. I'm kind of at the point now where I'd like to get the word out just on a very broad scale. And I have a full-time practice and 2 kids, so I need some help with that. Considering hiring somebody to kind of do social media, because I can't navigate through that. And I know that I need to present myself in that way. But I do think that this is something that people need to hear from a therapist, or from, all of us healthcare professionals should be talking about it. I think the pediatrician should be talking about it more. My ultimate goal is to do a TED Talk and write a book, because I really think that this is not just a Grosse Pointe issue. This is a national issue. Yeah, it's clinical. Yeah.
Do you think, and I don't know if this would even be helpful or not, do you think schools would be open to having you talk to the kids in a group setting? And I don't know if that would, kids might be like, that
Yeah.
whole, I don't know.
Like I said a little bit ago, the schools have not been very open to me. I've reached out. Yeah, I don't know. I did a talk at Liggett. They invited me to talk. The majority of the audience didn't like what I had to say. And the Grosse Pointe public schools they're not interested. And like I said, part of it is that I haven't pushed through the door. And I probably need to do that more, but I don't know. I would think that they would be automatically open to it, and that I wouldn't have to push through the door. So, I don't know. I think that they don't really see a problem with it.
My son is 8, and I definitely notice extremely enhanced addictive behaviors with the screen. So with the Liggett, my kids.
Okay.
And they have the apps that help with their school.
Yes.
Which we, thought, oh, well, let's just get a central little device that he can use. But even with the educational things, it was intensely agonizing to have to give that up.
Yep.
And there were such extreme behaviors where, it was like, I've never seen such anger out of a small child. Like, how could this even, to the point where he was like threatening, I'm going to jump out the window, this is my, and
yes.
Like, where's the time when you just play? Why are you concerned with your life?
I know, because I think we've been taught that, this is good for education, that this is going to help them. But what we're not realizing is that child development doesn't work this way. So when you press a button and you get a response, even if it's an educational response, that's stimulating the brain to get excited about the cause and effect. So that right there is building addiction. It doesn't matter if it's not a game. It is a game, isn't it? Right.
From these experiences, I'm like, we're never getting one.
That's right.
This is just not something that you, at least at this point in your life, can manage.
Right.
We're just going to avoid that, so we've done away with all.
That's wise. And that's one thing that I haven't talked a lot about is the video gaming. And because my assumption is that people understand that this is all linked and connected. And I'll just kind of say that across the board, that the gaming is linked to this issue too. It's all one and the same in terms of addiction and, just needing that to feel good. And so I even tell parents of young kids who let them, watch YouTube, watch their little videos on YouTube. And then there's the videos on the side there that you might like if you watch the one video. So then the kids are then clicking around and pressing the buttons and watching all these other videos. And I tell parents, I say, it's better if you put a DVD on for them. Because what people aren't understanding is that press the button, cause and effect. That does something to the brain. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask, can you maybe give some examples? So when you say that you gave a talk at Liggett or wherever it was, and it was not well received, were you hearing excuses? Were you hearing, how, I guess I'm wondering what you were picking up on that you felt wasn't being received? Like, was it more by the kids themselves? Was it by parents? Was it both?
Well, I talk to the parents, but the reports that I get, so Liggett does a lot of this, this conversation with the parents and the kids because they have the technology in the school, so they want to make sure that, you know, the kids are using it appropriately and they're okay with it, and so there's a lot of discussion. So my understanding of the kids and their reaction to what the parents are saying is that the parents are over-exaggerating, that everything's fine and they're, you know, being ridiculous. The feedback I got from the parents was a lot of resistance to my approach that it's not appropriate to give a middle schooler a device. And people don't want to hear that. That's just a really tough thing for people to hear because, you know, like Frank in the back said, it's the cat's out of the bag. And so what do we do about that? How do we rein it back in? And, you know, I just got a lot of pushback for that. Yeah. Yeah. And I, you know, there was a part of me that thought, well, maybe I'm wrong, you know, I don't know. I was kind of questioning myself, but after, you know, the more reading I do and the more I see this right in front of me every day, you know, at an individual level, I realize that this really needs to be information that the masses have. And, you know, I'm getting burnt out from my practice because I'm getting inundated with these calls daily and I can't see everyone. And so what I think is important is that we have groups of people talking about it and coming together and saying, yes, this isn't okay, we need to do something about it.
Yeah. I know their rule is for the kids in middle school to have their phones in the locker.
Yes.
But I was shocked that they even allow, like, for, you know, for me with an 8-year-old, I couldn't even believe that we allowed kids to have school phones in school.
Well, and you know,
the parents that I spoke with said, oh, but you know, they can get a hold of you and it just makes life so much easier.
And you know, it was interesting because
why didn't they just use the regular phone?
I agree. And again, it's the parents because, so after I did a talk, Liggett hosted a screening of that film, Screen-agers, and then they hosted a discussion afterwards. And the middle school principal said to one of the parents, you're sending them to school with the phones. And I was like, yes, thank you for saying that, because absolutely. And so, yes, handle it and manage it. Well, their way of handling it and management, which I love, is keep them in your lockers. But the middle schools and the public schools are not doing that, and that's an issue. No.
I put a Facebook post today just to say, you know, what are the policies of yours? And a friend of mine who has a kid at Groves said there's signs all over Groves that say no cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, every school district is different, and I know private is more oftentimes like.
Yes, the private schools, yeah.
Right, but
yeah.
I thought that was interesting because Birmingham, Grosse Pointe, very similar, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I'd be curious to know, does Birmingham have technology in the schools? And I wonder if that's why they are saying no cell phones, because they already have the technology built in. Or are they even using it in their education? That would be an interesting thing to find out. Right. But I just want to give a blanket disclaimer that, you know, I'm not sure that I've been clear about this, but I'm not really a believer in abstinence education. I think we know that that doesn't work. So I'm only saying no phones in middle school. I think when they get to high school, that's when you can start to, you know, talk to them and, you know, give them the information and communicate and make sure they can come to you with stuff that they feel is, you know, inappropriate or they're uncomfortable with, because that's when they're developmentally ready for it, for those tough conversations. They're not developmentally ready until then. So when I say no cell phones, I mean, you know, strictly elementary and middle school, because they just can't navigate them at that point. And there's nothing we can do to help them navigate at that age, as far as I'm concerned. There's no amount of talking and educating that we can do at that age.
So do your clients that, you know, you said we have primarily middle schoolers, so have those families taken away the phone?
They have. Some of them have. And, you know, they see the pushback and the anger and the, you know, but they push through it. And I can tell you there's been several cases where, you know, the kids change. They make huge changes. And, you know, then the goal is to, like, give the phone back, enter it back into your life a little bit, and kind of see how you do and have some boundaries around it. And they're always really good at that after they've had a little break. But it can do.
What are you saying about like summer vacation? Do you give them a little more leeway during the summer, or do you stay on the same schedule?
I think stay on the same schedule because summer, in my opinion, is an opportunity to create, to have some time to figure out,
But that 10 o'clock curfew should stay in place.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I would think actually that would be easier for them in the summer because they're not as busy, and so they can actually hang out with each other during the day. So they wouldn't need, to be on at all hours of the night. Yeah.
I worked for outdoor programs in my university, and I saw the extreme value of outdoor education and for kids to get outside and to really interact with one another and work together. And do the schools here, like in the middle schools, do they have any programs where they take the kids away and really team build and work together to work on relational skills at all?
I don't know.
Grade Camp Howell for 2 days or a day and a half.
Yeah, a couple days, yeah.
But see, that's another thing. I think it's kind of the parents' responsibility. Like, I sent my daughter to a camp for 2 weeks, and there's no
phones.
no electronics. Or
Yeah.
in fact, it's way up in Upper Canada, in Muskoka. I can't even talk to her during a time, and they won't let us text.
That's good.
Wow.
And so I love that.
Yeah.
We also have a cottage in Canada where grandma's pretty strict about, it's the 50s again, kids. Get down to the beach and go swimming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be up here at lunch and, so I think it's kind of our responsibility.
It is.
No, that's true.
I think.
But, I mean, maybe we're fortunate to have that, which if you're not, be creative.
Well, I also think if the schools are saying bring your phones, then they need to definitely address how you should be interacting with each other face to face. If they're encouraging this, then they need to take some responsibility too.
And where's the training for the teachers?
Yeah, I just
That's
feel like
right.
we're putting a lot on.
I think, but the schools are encouraging it, so you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I know.
So
Weren't
here's.
you also saying that we as parents and a community should go to our schools and say, enough is enough?
Well, absolutely. So I guess my point is.
Relationship with his counselor, and he's very open to taking his phone at the start of the school day and giving it back to him at the end.
Wow.
But I've built that relationship. He has a 504 plan because he has, some struggles with his education.
Because of the phone. The phone, I think I'm fine in school. The phone is a distraction. Without it, I think I listen in class better. I'm not as distracted. Oh, we're not doing anything. Oh, I can just go scroll through Instagram or whatever. I actually listen to the teacher.
Wow.
And also about the teachers, so I think the teachers need to be more keyed in on what the kids are doing because a lot of them are hiding it under their desks.
Yeah.
A lot of teachers will say, oh, put your phone away or I'll take it, but they don't do anything about it.
Right. That's right.
They just think that intimidation is going to make them put it away. It doesn't.
That's right. Yeah.
They're tired too.
They're busy.
Oh, sure.
Well, and it's a lot, if you've ever worked in a classroom, it's a lot to manage, it's a lot to oversee, because it's one component of a myriad of other things that are happening also.
Sure. I mean, but that's the thing. If the school is saying bring your phones, then it's on the teachers, and that's absolutely not fair because they're not only making sure that they're teaching, but they have to have classroom management and making sure everyone's okay, and that's just one more thing on their plate that they don't need. So I think it should be like a school policy.
Well, there's technological blocks that they can put in place on the network in those buildings to stop this.
Oh, there is.
Oh, absolutely.
There's definitely, I've been in places where Wi-Fi is blocked social media where you cannot go on.
That's what they need.
Why don't they do that?
Yeah, a lot of
What do they say? Why?
They said we don't have the funding to make changes this time. It's a funding issue.
So meaning they would have to pay for certain software that.
Consultants,
Okay. Got it.
advise them because they're, you know,
I bet any one of these guys-
financially.
Probably make it a summer project.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, these kids could do it. They just set it up.
Absolutely.
That's true. They don't have to hire anybody, right? Problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, these kids on computers in the womb, I always think about.
That's true. They are, yeah, they're very savvy, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about moving forward? Like, how could we use this opportunity
Yeah.
to actually do something with it? Because obviously it struck a chord with people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I would suspect if other people were here, it would do the same.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of is. I think it's a problem at every level. I think it's a parent problem, and I'm not judging. I've been guilty of it myself. You know, I walked into it not realizing, many of us did, like not realizing what we were doing, not realizing how it was going to take off, not knowing how to navigate. We thought, you know, but I think it's definitely a parent. I did the same thing. Oh, I'm getting it for a safety reason. I'm getting it for communication. Well, those are the last two things my son has used it for.
That's right.
You know, and again, I'm in elementary, and I hear parents drop off their third graders and say, "I'll text you at 11 or check it." It's like, again, it's like, I think as parents, I'm not sure how we kind of evolved in this direction. I don't know entirely or understand it, but I think it's got to start with us, just like anything. Just
It
like
does.
you with your son and your food allergies.
That's
My
right.
son has food allergies as well, and I've, you know, made different decisions about how I've chosen to deal with it that maybe are different from other parents who have food allergies. But again, I feel like we've lost our innate trust, like you did.
Yes.
You said, I went and I gave this talk. I know what I feel has validity, but as soon as you put it out there and you don't feel that support, you start to question it. But yet, I bet in our guts we know
That's right. That's
it's
right.
not correct. And I don't think any of us are saying we should live in a world without it. I think we're trying to figure out how to live in the world with it when we're introducing it.
That's right.
Like he wouldn't have started driving in 6th grade, right?
Mhm.
Because he's not developmentally. Again, it goes back to, but we're giving these things, and we've done it unknowingly, what the costs were.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we should keep spiraling in that direction.
That's right. That's right.
in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like two concrete things have been mentioned. One is the comparison with other school districts and what they're doing. And two is the information that this stuff can be turned off in the schools.
Yes.
And it just seems like if I were to, you know, be taking the next step, I would, you know, go talk to those schools, and I would then, you know, approach with a concrete request or petition or whatever.
Mhm.
And maybe we can all just, I mean, I know there was a sign-in sheet.
Mhm.
Maybe we can all just create an email
Mhm.
group and, you know, come up with some, you know, a concrete suggestion to the school system of, look, you know, here's how this school district is handling it, and, you know, kind of see if we can get any more interest with friends, family, whatever, and kind of build a bigger group.
Mhm.
Would it be helpful to go to one of the board meetings?
Yeah, it
and
would be best to do that.
Yeah.
Presentation to a board.
Yep.
But again, I agree. No, I mean, being an employee and a parent here, I can say, I mean, you're right. It's best to have like a real specific outline and game plan. I mean, if you're going to take that time to be heard, you want to make sure you know what you're asking.
That's right.
And be as specific as possible, because otherwise it's just, you know, put off. It's too general. It's too this. It's too that.
Right.
Thing. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I can, you know, start a letter just from my perspective, what I'm seeing, and from a psychological perspective. And if somebody wants to kind of take the lead to research what other schools are doing, and then maybe we could put the two together, and then try to get as many signatures as we can. I think that's a good start. Yeah.
I really applaud what you're doing, and that
Thank
you're
you.
taking notice of this and taking, you know, affirmative steps, because
Yeah.
I think that it's a huge issue that, you know, not a lot of people appreciate.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I've wanted to do this since I was 8 years old. So, and I wanted to do this with kids. So this is very passionate for me. And I've been doing it for 14 years. And the reason why I started to talk about this is because in the last 5 or so years, I'm seeing dysfunction that I'd never seen before. And I, did my research and I figured, I had this theory and then I backed it up and it's pretty true. And so I continue to have passion for it because I think the kids, they need it. They need somebody to stand up and say this isn't okay. And they don't like it. But, exactly. That's right.
Time to get used to it.
Yeah.
I've gotten my phone taken away for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I get mad the first day or two. After a while, I just get used to it.
But your creativity comes out and you start building things.
That's right.
Making things.
And you realize you're okay. And I see that all the time. I see kids like you that say that, I had a kid the other night say that she got in trouble. She knew that she was going to be in trouble. And she walked in her house and she handed her mom the phone. She said, and I said, and how did you feel? She goes, I was fine with it. She goes, I knew it was going to get taken away and I was fine with it. And so, yeah, I'm glad you said that because I see that all the time. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you for being here. Yeah, it's good to have your perspective.
I wasn't exactly sure about coming in here tonight, but
yeah.
I think it was a good idea.
Well, good. I'm glad you
I
came.
think that was great.
Yeah.
Your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you a senior?
So,
Oh, okay. At South?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Family Center, thank you for being here. It was a great conversation.